The genesis of this conference was really to sort of tackle what is the broader theme, because we see many conferences in the market about renewable energy. We're seeing an increasing number of conferences and events around nuclear power. I attended an event just last month, for example, in Krakow, about the role that nuclear has to play in moving towards a decarbonized and energy secure future. So the concept and the idea here was, let's look at two of the primary, let's say, tools in the toolkit that Romania has to effectively wean itself off of fossil fuels. And for many of you, you're aware that the plan was initially that as the EU was putting pressure on Romania and other countries, other member nations, to decommission their dirty coal-fired power plants, the lignite coal plants, there would be a transition period of, say, 10 to 15 years through natural gas, and then ultimately we would transition to, let's say, a more net carbon zero approach to energy. Unfortunately, events across the border in Ukraine in February 2022 have really underscored the need to essentially leapfrog over, to some extent, natural gas. Not to minimize. Obviously, Romania is blessed with the Black Sea gas situation. We can be a net provider of energy, including fossil fuels, for the foreseeable future. But I think for Romania, we've really taken the lead in the region. For example, when I was in Poland, I was struck by how much they would like to be doing where Romania has already achieved. So Romania really is in a unique position. And so the problem, as we all know, many of you, I look in the audience and we know each other. We've worked since the heyday of the first boom, I call it, after the Law 220 in 2008, 2009, where everybody was chasing the green certificates. Obviously, those were suspended after January of 2017. And we saw many countries taking the position, well, you know, we've achieved the 2020 targets. We have over-subsidized, and it's costing us too much money. So we saw many countries phasing out feed-in tariffs, tradable green certificates, what have you. Of course, then the EU has raised the bar with the more ambitious 2030 targets. So this, coupled with the energy security issue that I mentioned, has really sort of moved this on a fast track. And I think one of the issues and concerns has always been with renewable, that from the naysayers, including our former glorious president, besides the fact that windmills kill birds, is the idea that you can't. What are you going to do when the sun's not shining, you know, the wind's not blowing? How are you going to provide baseload electricity? And our first panel this afternoon is going to address that very issue. We're going to look at some of the solutions that are available and some of the aspects of that equation that are being tackled in the real world, in terms of how do we integrate renewables into the baseload energy mix. So that's going to be a very interesting panel, and I'm going to call the panelists up, but I'll introduce them in order. I'll give a brief bio on each and ask them to speak for a while and one or two questions, but I would encourage you all, if during the break or at the end of the event you want to talk to any of the speakers, they're available. And then we will take, as I said, we'll take a coffee break on at 4:30 is what I think, is that right, 4:30? And then, you know, we'll come back, and my colleague, Dina, who's here, is going to moderate the second panel on the nuclear aspects, which again, that's another interesting dynamic, because the knock on nuclear is, although it's a proven technology and it's carbon neutral, the problems are, we all know, you know, the popular perception after Fukushima, after 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, you know, is it still a safety issue? And I think some of the speakers may speak to that. And the second issue, of course, is from the environmental perspective, it may not create carbon, but there's concerns around, you know, disposal of nuclear waste. But I think what we'll hear is that actually with some of the new technologies, the cutting edge, such as the SMRs, which Romania is actively pursuing, we see ourselves, again, speaking for Romania, at the cusp of what could be a new renaissance in nuclear. And we're seeing that not just in Romania, as again, I mentioned Poland, but even in the United States, there was an article a few days ago about even among the states. Some states are taking a more conservative approach. Other states are going all in on nuclear. So it's interesting to see the dynamic, as I think nuclear is being reconsidered as a tool in the toolkit, again, to fight climate change and to address decarbonization and targets that are established by that. So I'm going to start now with those words. I just wanted to kind of frame the context of what we're going to be talking about today, and we're very honored. First of all, I thank all of you for being here. I think it's a good turnout, and I think this is hopefully going to be the first in a series of these sorts of more, let's say, informal discussions, without the big conference rooms and without all the people, but more focused from industry experts and people that really know the sector. So I'm going to ask Raresh Horgish to come up, and hi Raresh, and Olivia and Savin, come on and grab a seat. Olivia, thank you for coming. We've got also on our panel Livio Gavrila. Hi, Livio. Thanks for coming. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. And unfortunately, Sebastian Inake could not be here today. He has some other commitment that arose, but we have Alexandru Bratushin. I think Alexandru, I saw him. Thanks, Alexandru, for coming. Grab a seat. And Valentin. Oh, he's here. Hi, Valentin. Come on up, grab a seat. You're on the end. Okay, so we've got a really interesting and eclectic panel here. I'm going to start off by introducing Raresh to my immediate left. Raresh is the general manager of FEL Romania, Future Energy Leaders, and he's going to speak about prosumers, which is something near and dear. I'm actually a registered prosumer, and I can tell you it's not all been a road paved with it's been maybe paved with good intentions, but it is a challenge, and we'll be interested to hear about some of the challenges and opportunities that Romania faces with the prosumers. Raresh holds a PhD in economics at Babeș-Bolyai University from Cluj. He has over 10 years of experience in the energy sector, primarily distribution, supply of natural gas and electricity, as well as renewable energies and new technologies, and two of the largest profile companies active in Romania. And he has particular expertise in the area of strategy, business development, finance, and respectively in the implementation of strategic and transformational projects. He's interested in sustainability and new technologies that help us reduce the impact on the environment in which we now live. So with those words, Raresh, of interest, we're very interested to hear your views on prosumers and how they can be, you know, the whole prosumer sort of approach could be a viable means of addressing the decarbonization issue.
It works? Yeah, I think so. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be part of this panel. At Future Energy Leaders Romania, we are constantly looking at the prosumer market, and is one of our main strategic pillars in which we really believe that will help to decarbonize the energy sector worldwide, in Europe, and particularly here in Romania. I don't know if you are aware how many megawatts are now installed on the prosumer side.
No,
today?
I mean it would be. I'm going to venture a guess. I don't know. 500 megawatts?
No, 1,150 megawatts.
Wow, okay.
Just today. And roughly...
So that makes my 30 kilowatts seem sort of like a rounding error.
So it is expected by 2030, the installed capacity to reach up to 5 gigawatts. And by the mid of next year to reach the installed capacity of the nuclear energy power in Romania, because we are having here in the next panel our colleagues from Nuclear Electrica. But this rapid development was mainly driven by state aid and state funding schemes, which really boosted the development of prosumers in Romania. But for the moment, as we talked in the break before the panel, the prosumers are using the grid as a battery. So on the long run, and even on the medium term, if this support scheme won't change, because at this moment in time, this is under discussion, the metering, we have the net metering, but also we have the state and the government intends to issue a new ordinance in order to compensate the electricity that you have produced with the consumption of natural gas. This will put a tremendous effort on the supplier side, even though many of them really encounter difficulties to have the net metering and to repay your injected electricity.
Yeah, if I may, sorry, Raj, just to jump in there, because I think this is an important point for anyone who's tried to become certified or authorized as a prosumer. Just in addition to the documentation, at least what I found in my experience was the intersection, as they say, where the rubber hits the road, is how do you interface with the supplier, or the operator, where, in my case, where I'm located, it's with Electrica, where you're talking about new technologies and smart technologies, whether it be smart metering or net metering, and then how do you deal with, many instances, companies that are, let's say, more, to be polite, more established bureaucracies, or that maybe aren't at the cutting edge of technology, and how can you sort of bring them kicking and screaming into the 21st century with this idea that we're going to have prosumers and that you need to have the technology to facilitate the implementation and the integration of prosumer energy into the grid?
First of all, you will need smart metering to be more rapidly deployed. We have now an established plan to reach up to 30% of the consumers to have smart meters by 2028, and this could be accelerated, but there will need some funds to be put in place or to be recognized in the tariff for the DSO. But just to have a real integration of the prosumers in the grid, we believe that we have to put in place some batteries, because only by having storage facilities together with the production facilities, you can create the so-called virtual power plants. But at this moment in time, there is no incentive to develop a virtual power plant in Romania, because there are the support schemes that every prosumer benefits of. So, but we have to expect that in 3 to 4 years, these schemes to be phased out, and then at that moment in time, we can speak about virtual power plants in Romania that prosumers to form energy communities and to share the electricity and to bring different economic value to those communities that are targeting to enter in the energy community.
Just two follow-up questions I had related to that. One is, you mentioned battery storage sort of at the prosumer level. And again, speaking from experience, 12 years ago, I installed a smaller system using lead-acid batteries, which is the industry standard in 2012. But about 4 years ago, as you know, the batteries over time, you have to keep filling them with distilled water, and then you have to replace them after some period of time, after typically 8 years. And I approached the market again and was told that still at that time that lithium-ion and other solutions were still not commercially viable at the sort of the home prosumer level. Do you see that maybe if we talk in another, say, 5 years, what will be the market industry for, let's say, standard? Will it still be lead-acid batteries, or do you think that things like the wall box, which Tesla has developed, will start to infiltrate the market? And as a secondary question to that, we've seen the explosion over the last even 18, 24 months of electric vehicles now really taking hold in the Romanian market. And this is one of the big, sort of dreams. If you can produce your own energy, plug your car in, which is what I do. I have the panels directly into the inverter. You're essentially powering your cars for free. You don't even pay the money that you would pay the utility operator. Do you see the accelerated rollout of electric vehicles as maybe being a catalyst for driving forward also this move towards prosumerism, because it has a real economic dollars and cents impact on the average person who drives a lot, around Bucharest during the week or on the weekends, especially when you see gas going up towards 6, 7, lei a liter?
I do believe that compared to the PV technology, also the storage technology will rapidly evolve. We can see now on the Romanian market there are PV parks that on the same land they have tripled the capacity of production compared to what existed in 2010, for example. And this will also happen in the case of batteries. But also, as you mentioned, we do believe that electric vehicles will be a catalyst. But what will be another important driver of the market will be the decarbonization of heating, because just to remember, we have to decarbonize the heating system, and one solution is to use hybrid pumps or pure electric pumps. And here, this is also my case. I have a heat pump at my home, and it's quite costly to have it installed. And this will drive me certainly that next year I will install some PV panels. But there is another issue on this market at this moment in time. I'm living in a block of flats, and you just,
where do you put them? How do you get legal easement rights to put the panels?
There are some issues that must be overcome, and here we have together with Între Vecini, there is another NGO, and we are working together with them to ease the process of becoming a prosumer at the block of flats, for example.
Yeah, it's an interesting, the heating aspect is also important in terms of, and that also ties in with everything like energy efficiency, retrofitting buildings so that you're, using less energy as you transition. But there are some interesting solutions when you talk about evacuated tubes for hot water, for raising the ambient temperature of water in your boiler so you're not burning as much fossil fuel to get to the hot temperature you need. Another interesting technology for those who have the property or the land who don't have apartments is the idea of a geothermal, heat pumps that go into the ground, which are the most efficient, but can be the most costly. So your front-end costs are quite high, but you amortize fairly quickly over the life of the investment. So there's some really interesting and exciting things. I'm going to deviate from what I planned, and I'm going to ask because it's been so interesting, and I know we need to move in, but is there anybody, I don't want to dominate the questions, maybe somebody in the audience would have a question for Raresh before I move on to Olivier, on to our next speaker, because I personally find this fascinating, the idea of prosumer, and I think that idea of getting away from the traditional hub and spoke with the massive transmission lines and all the infrastructure that entails to creating these mini communities, as you said, where you can power, a number of homes off a locally sited either solar PV or some other, one or two wind turbines could drive a couple of households. It negates the need for these, again, massive reinforced grid. You simply create your own power plant and consume the energy on site. And for many articles I've read, they see this could be the way that we could be moving in the future. But that may be down the road, but I think it really does have a role to play. And I wasn't aware of, statistically, as Raresh was mentioning, just how much is already deployed in the prosumer and how much is on the horizon. So I think that's a really exciting and something we can all get behind, I think, because we all have the potential to be prosumers. I think, can you be an individual prosumer, or do you have to be a company? I think individuals can.
Individuals, yeah.
Okay, good to know. Well, great. Listen, he'll be available. You're going to stick around, right? So you're not going to take off. So Raresh will be here if you want to talk to him during the coffee break or during the end of the event. And I'm going to move over to Olivier. And I know you guys are out of order, so I'm just going to skip over. But Olivier, thank you for being. We've talked a little bit, or Raresh touched a little bit on energy storage. And Olivier, first of all, allow me to introduce Olivier for those of you who don't know him. He holds a PhD in energy engineering, and he graduated as head of the Department of Hydroenergetics at the Faculty of Energy at the Polytechnic University of Bucharest. He completed an international master's degree at the Institut National Polytechnique de Grenoble in France, and then worked at the largest energy producer in Europe, EDF, where he completed a 3-year industrial doctoral thesis, completing his higher education in 3 different languages. So he can also curse at you in 3 different languages, right, if you get him angry. He has developed a software and a theory to estimate the cost of starting and stopping hydropower plants, especially those with pump storage, analyzing the reliability of the main equipment, both mechanical and electrical, publishing articles in the most appreciated international conferences and newspapers, and this method can also be applied to other energy sources depending on the equipment. He's currently the director of the Communication and Marketing Department at the Future Energy Leaders of Romania and part of the Romanian National Committee of the World Energy Council since January of this year, of 2023. And again, we're very pleased and honored to have Olivier here to spend some time with us and share his thoughts on this topic of the pumped hydro. And I think you have a presentation, is that right?
Yes, okay. Thank you, Brian, for this lovely introduction. As my colleague from FEL said, in Future Energy Leaders, we are looking for all types of energies. So today I will present the hydropower energy. A topic that in Romania it was discussed, but we didn't have it implemented as a project. So I have
if you want to stand up, Olivier, and feel free. Okay. I mean, it's very informal like this. Walk around. That way you won't wake up in the middle of the night with a stiff neck, right?
Yes, thank you. So I will speak the context in Europe, the research that is made on this topic, and then what's happening in Romania. The last hydropower plant that was built in the Alps with 900 megawatts installed capacity. So this was commissioned in 2022 in the heart of the Alps. The principle is simple. We have 2 dams or 2 lakes, one up and one down, the lower lake and the upper lake. So we will turbine the water when we need electricity, and when we have a surplus of energy, we will pump the water. As you can see here, this project is around like 20 gigawatts hour storage. It's called like a water battery. So we can integrate this in our system very easily. As Brian said, and in discussion before, we have a lot of cars in Romania. In Europe in general, electric cars. I know that nowadays it's around like 21,000 something electrical cars. This type of technology can provide battery for 4,000 cars. So this is the context in Europe. They are building in every country, and this is the last one that was built in Europe. Can I go to the next slide? Okay, that's the one. Okay. Thank you. So what's happening all around Europe, they're not only building them, they're also upgrading them. This is a project that I worked on it, and they upgraded with 75% a power plant. This is the upper lake that was built in the Alps. So this is like an artificial one. It was built, new one, and they used to pump this water to storage the energy. So this is the most powerful unit in France, and it can provide energy for 225 households. They did this because they saw they need the electricity, and not only this one, they need to integrate the other type of technology. So I will say a few words about the integration of the technology. So not only building and upgrading, there's also research on this topic. So we have here in the very west of Europe a power plant that was commissioned in 2017, and there's a full-scale application research. So there's an European project around $80 million with a funding of 50 million euros from European Union. So this is like variable speed technology. What does it mean? It means like when you want to provide electricity to the grid, it means that you can integrate the other. So you can provide the ancillary service that you need to integrate the wind and the solar ones. So this is a quite big power plant. You can see like with almost 400 with a 400 megawatt reversible turbine, you can generate a lot of energies. So this is the context in Europe. Nowadays, I know that in Norway, they are building a lot of types of power plants that are providing electricity to integrate the offshore wind technology. So in Romania, we need this type of energy from for two aspects. First of all, we need this because it can usually integrate the wind and the solar one. So this is, as we saw, there's like a water storage, and we can provide the type of ancillary service that we need to integrate them. The cost of this type of power plants, it can be discussed because it depends on the topography. The hydropower plants, they're unique in the world. Like if you build one, it's one standalone and it's unique. If you need to build another one, you will need another study. So this is why it's a little bit costly to build this one, but it will integrate and easily provide the electricity and the ancillary service that we need. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Olivia, and appreciate that. It's really interesting because, you know, you're touching on this idea of hydro storage, and we all know that one of the challenges for renewables in Romania has been, and I've mentioned, you know, there's the issue of providing baseload, but it's also load balancing from a technical perspective. And we know, you know, by some reckoning that, you know, Transelectrica needs some billion euros of upgrades and investment. And any of us who have worked with investors know that in many instances, depending on where the particular project is sited, whether it be wind or solar, there may be a fit out on the grid, or the substations might need to be built, and these costs are typically upfront costs may be borne by the investor, although they may be compensated over time. But oftentimes, if that's the case, this can create issues for the business plan and the financial models. And I guess one aspect besides just upgrading the grid and investing, which is obviously important, but is the idea about using this storage techniques and storage technologies to essentially balance so that you're able to regulate more effectively when the demand, is injected into the grid, and how you can hold back, so you avoid, for example, the situation with wind farms where you have to curtail, often uncompensated for the investor. So where do you see a project like these in Western Europe? Are these science fiction for Romania? Obviously, Romania has a deep and rich history of hydro, going back even to the communist times. But I think the projects we're talking about now, and the role that they can play in terms of a storage, like a big, as you put it, a water battery. What are you seeing for Romania, and how this could be integrated, this technology, to better enhance the deployment of renewables more generally?
Well, in Romania, there is a lot of discussion of this type of project, but none of them succeed. So
like
I hopefully
Temnica is one of the ones that comes to mind.
Yes, exactly. It's a project that it's since like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
They speak about it.
I heard about this before I came to Romania in 1996. I think it was still out there, but I'm kidding. But no, it's been out there for a long time, I think.
Yeah. Well, the discussion was if it's from financial point of view, if it's worthy or not. I think it's more than this. It's more than financial point of view. It's about strategic, and also about the integrate the other renewables energy. I know that nowadays is around 3,000 megawatts installed in wind. If I'm wrong, please correct me. I think with this type of technology, it can be boosted, this capacity, to more than 4,000 megawatts, and in my opinion, it can be doubled, this type of installed energy. So it's about integrating the other renewables, and it's not about we are building a hydro power plant, we are not building the other type of energy. They need to work together to coexist, and this will boost the energy market.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because oftentimes there's sort of this perception that the different technologies are in competition. But in fact, and this is one of the reasons, again, we thought to bring nuclear into a presentation or a conference where we're also talking about renewables. But you make a very important point, and that is that some of these technologies can be and will be complementary, because we have, for example, in the first wave, as we call it, of the renewables, when it was driven largely by the subsidies, but more often than not, you would just see these standalone, whether they be wind or whether they be solar PV projects. But more and more, we're seeing clients approaching us who are looking for an energy storage element to the project as well, or somehow that there can be an ancillary associated project, which because it's about facing what you have production behind the meter, and then what's going forward or from the storage facility, let's say. So we've seen some very interesting technologies in this regard. And so I guess my question to you is, do you see that maybe micro hydro storage could also, because we're talking about very large projects that you've profiled here, is it viable commercially and technically to have maybe projects which would be smaller? I don't know, I'm asking the question maybe from a position of ignorance, but if you had, say, something less than a 50 megawatt solar PV project, and you could site it in such a way that you might be able to have a storage of a hydro storage solution of the sort you've mentioned, is that viable? Do you see that as a possibility for Romania?
This type of project, they're already built in France on the run-of-river power plants, but they are building the storage capacities in batteries. So they work in hybrid mode, this type of projects. And I think also in Romania it can be do this type of project where you're working in hybrid mode for the micro power plants. Mm-hmm. Because the problem is simple. The wind and solar, they can produce when the wind is blowing and the sun is shining. So you need to store this capacity somewhere. You can store it in a water battery, and then you can use it when you need it. So this is also my message that I want to send, is like this type of energy, they need to work together. It's not a competition.
It's very interesting as you're speaking, Olivier, because I'm thinking about situations now, what we're finding, as lawyers, we get approached by clients who may have projects, and one of the primary questions, or one of the fundamental questions, even before you commence the due diligence on, say, land title and ATR and permits, is whether or not there's capacity in the local grid. Where have you sited the project? We all know, with the wind, all the huge projects that were deployed 10, 15 years ago down in Dobrogea, that if you're looking to develop a project there, you might have to wait longer than in other regions. So, but now if you have this technology, that might alleviate that issue, because if you actually could create a project where you would store the energy so that you're injecting it into the grid on the off-peak hours, where there may not be all this, priority injected renewables coming into the grid, say when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. So it's an interesting idea that might open up otherwise, let's say, areas that are less attractive because of these capacity concerns.
Yes. In Norway, they already did this. So they have a lot of history in hydropower, and they built this type of pump storage hydropower. And now they are building a lot of offshore wind. So I know in Romania there is some project ongoing. So it can be an answer for this type of project.
Great. I've got one final question, and then I'm perhaps, again, I want to allow the audience to maybe jump in if they do. And don't feel obligated, you can track him down on the break. But if we were talking about these technologies in real terms, what would be the costs, do you think? Can you sort of give a ballpark for this technology to deploy it? And do you think that we could find investors or financing, financial institutions who might get behind these sorts of projects?
Yeah, so every hydropower plant is unique in the world. So you need the exact topography to build a hydropower plant. The first example that I showed, the power plant built in Switzerland of 900 megawatts, the cost of the whole project was $1.5 billion. In Romania, I know they've done some feasibility studies, and the price can go on that range, but it depends, because if you have the lower lake, the cost will be 2 times less expensive. If you have to build the upper lake, it'll be 2 times more expensive. So let's say the rate is not exactly the megawatt and the euro, but it's around 1 to 2 millions per megawatt, something like that.
Interesting. Are there any questions, perhaps, again, for Livian? Yes, please.
Dragoș Tudose from Blue Capital Partners. I would just ask one short question regarding the storage solutions. So we've been talking a lot lately about the batteries and the hydrogen option, but apparently this hydro storage solution is much cleaner from a footprint perspective. So to produce batteries, of course, you have a serious carbon footprint and everything. And the short question would be, why don't we talk more about this hydro solution? Why versus the batteries?
Yeah, in Romania, I want to say that we are blessed because of the nature that we have. So we have the mountains, we have the lakes, we have the water to provide this type of technology. It's about the strategy, and it's about what we want to see in the future. From my point of view, I think in the East Europe, we should talk about this type of energy, because we see them in the West, and they're providing exactly what they need for the grid. In the East Europe, we don't have this type of project yet. Hopefully next year or in the next few years, we will see some project done on this side.
But am I missing something, or is this really a win-win solution? I mean, you don't pollute to produce the battery, and then you have like instant capacity. It really looks like a win-win storage. Yeah, you need the geography, but we have it. We have it. Yeah. We have it, and many others. So yeah, I guess.
I think if I may, it's sometimes maybe not as sexy as, let's say, because it's a proven technology, it's been around for years. But everybody, you're right, everybody's talking about batteries, but then you have the concern about how do you get rare earth. You've got the difficulties in getting the materials you need to make the batteries, and then of course there's the disposal of the batteries when they get too old. And this is sort of God's provided a water battery, as you said. And I'm curious, it's interesting because we all know that, I don't know that this is related, but I'm thinking as you're speaking about the cost and everything, we all know that Hydroelectrica, who had the recent IPO, in July, which was one of the largest, I think, still this year in Europe, not just in Romania. And whether you know, obviously that was Fundul Proprietate, which they sold their shares. But I'm wondering if the level of oversubscription and just let's say how that raised the profile, and maybe you know, and Hidroelectrica is also looking into ancillary sort of technologies. Do we see maybe that this idea that it's not sexy, but it can be, to the gentleman's question, a win-win and really be something that's a proven technology that can be deployed more commercially in the future without having to, you know, maybe it's not science fiction like all these battery technologies that we're talking about, or nuclear fusion and things of this nature 50 years in the future. But I mean, maybe we could see, given the history too, that the strong history that Romania always did have with hydropower, that this should be something increasingly analyzed or considered when you talk about a national energy strategy, say for 2030 to 2040.
Yeah, we heard about the project in the media that the Romanian government is conducting to build this type of power plant. I think it's about the willing and also about the strategy that we want to implement. As I said, in France, they did the hybrid battery runoff river storage. So it can also be seen like this. It can also be seen as water's battery for all types of renewable energy. But it's depending about a lot of things. Nowadays, I think it's more economically speaking point of view than strategically point of view. I hope that in the future they will see the more strategic part than the others.
Cycle for the batteries, this option might become even less expensive. Thank you. This was the last one. Thank you. So at the end of the day, even financially wise, it might become less expensive because you have a replacement cycle for batteries. That's financially costing money. And at the end of the day, even from this perspective, you might get better. I don't know. I'm just assuming.
Yes, probably. You need like a technical expertise to say to point on that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and thank you very much, Olivia. And you touched on other renewable energy sources. You mentioned specifically wind, and we're very honored to have with us today Livio Gavrila. For those of you who don't know Livio, he's the Vice President of the Romanian Wind Energy Association, RWEA. He's actively involved in hybrid projects and how they can be a solution for baseload electricity demand, which we've already touched on here. He's also Vice President he has almost 20 years of experience in the field and is the Chief Generation Officer of CEZ Romania, a company part of the CEZ Group. And as we all know, the largest, I think it's still to this day, the largest onshore wind park at 660 megawatts located down in Dobrogea. And he's actively contributed to the acquisition and construction of renewable electricity generation capacities between the boom period, as I call 2009 to 2014, with CEZ. So it's a real honor and pleasure to have you and get your insights here today, Livio, what you're thinking on this topic.
Okay, first of all, just starting from where this topic on the storage. The batteries are progressing in an unimaginable way, you know. So we're speeding up each 6 months in new technologies, cheaper, more efficient. So probably in the end, when we'll be discussing about, let's say, what will be the solution, I think is going to be a mixed one. Yeah.
Yeah, all of the above, as they say.
There is on the pumping hydro some conditions regarding environment, the expected evolution of the taxes on water and everything which is related to it. The capex intensiveness of this, unless there is a subsidy, makes it very, very, I would say, provocative for an investor.
There's also the issue and concern which we see when we have exceptionally warm and drought conditions in the summer. We saw even with nuclear, with the cooling towers can't be active because of the level of the Danube. So I think climate, it's kind of a chicken and egg, right? So you want to attack the climate change problem, but in order to deploy these technologies, in some instance, the effects of climate change are limiting their utility.
Exactly, and this is actually one of the, let's say, many provocation which lies in front of this. It's a matter of, how to say it, both politically and long-term strategy vision. Let's not forget, before speaking about anything else, that we are in the moment in which now in Romania, it is in progress, the update of the two most important stuff. It's one of sort of a general strategical approach on the energy sector, and the other one is this updated national plan in the sustainability and PNIESC, which is the abbreviation, and which basically should point how the future would look. Yeah. When speaking about future, and I will not how to say it lose time in presenting all the vision and everything, because most of you have been to many conferences. Everybody knows, everybody understands, and so. On our website in the Romanian Wind Energy Association, rva.ro, there is 2 studies to which I really encourage you to go to look. The first one, it's the roadmap to 2030, where we are using, actually we used together with an advisor, the PRIMES methodology, which was used to make the Fit for 55 action plan, and which is showing how much renewable we need and what is the energy mix in generation in Romania as a need to accomplish the target and how it will look in 2030. It's not, how to say it, paper, it's just very strong methodology in behind, and all of that is pointing, as for most of the Europe, toward this. You will be having nuclear, you'll be having wind, you'll be having solar, and then I'm saying solar, I'm saying also utility scale and prosumer. You'll be having hydropower plant, and you'll be having gas. Yeah, so all of these will function together. You'll be having gas and nuclear to address the baseload, and the rest should work like in sort of a tandemus, you know. So this is somehow how it would look like. Yeah. The second study which we're referring is this, what we are calling the Code of Good Practice in Renewables, where actually we're doing the sort of the entire market screening for a project from the idea to the final decommissioning, when we're going through each of the stages, what is, how should be, and what are the main provocation. But so I will not discuss about this. Addressing the complexity of the baseload and so. First of all, wind and solar are complementary. If you'll see the curve of the wind, basically you have some peaks during the spring, autumn, winter, and some off-peak during summer, while au contraire for the photovoltaic. So during the day, basically you can ensure the base load and you can cover the consumption through this complementary. What do you do during the night? What do you do during these periods in which you're not having wind? In this way, the storage is happening. And to address the batteries. So we have a huge opportunity on the batteries because I don't know how many of you know, but they are like in almost 98% recyclable, especially the technologies and the solid ones which are now pumping on the sodium and all of these new technologies. I'm not referring just to lithium-ion, you know, because we kind of overpassed all of those. There is now new technologies. I'm just giving you now example which we're having in our company. We apply for a subsidy for a large storage capacity, which since the moment in which we apply, together with our advisor and producer, which is from Japan, they already reach another level of development. And there is an updated technology that we should include, and now we're addressing how to update the documentation. Yeah, so we're discussing months, you know. So basically, you can skip all of this, and this means cleaner, more effective in number of cycles, lifetime duration, cost per megawatt hour of storage, and all of this. So probably batteries will take its place on a mid-long term. And again, given the fact these technologies, you can take it and you can recycle 98% of that battery, you know, so on and on and on. And if you're having this circularity approach, you'll be having also a battery as one of the solutions to address especially the prosumers, because for the prosumers, you'll need to address how much of cost you need to plug in then in order to maintain them. Let's imagine on a street, you know, that we're, I don't know, 10 filling by one transformer and 5 of us have some generation capacity, you know. If the energy cannot be upscaled, you know, because you need to somehow consume it in that, because this is the way the transformer is. Yeah. We had some discussions with different type of experts saying that it can work, and because you don't know exactly how the electron is circulating. Again, technically, you need to have sort of either storage in those prosumers, either to address somehow the consumption in that region. And now I'm passing to the main topic, because only 25% of the, and this is at the European level, of the energy consumption is electrical. Yeah. If you want to address the thing, you'll need to go to electrification. Raresh also mentioned it. So basically, The idea is to increase more in electrical, no matter it is transportation, heating, you already touched all of this. So this is going to ensure all of your energy where it's going to be. Yeah. How you are going to do this? Comparing to other countries, we are fortunate, yeah, because you can balance with the water, you have gas, we have everything actually which needs to proper maintain this. Yes, it has a cost because in the end, all of these technologies have a cost, but if we want to breathe clean air, if we want to be independent and to be safe on the long term, everybody of us needs to pay it.
Olivia, you raised a very interesting point. I hadn't really thought about this, but in some ways, because you alluded to the fact that the technologies are improving so rapidly, you use the example of battery storage, and you typically look at that as being a good thing. But it can be sort of a curse too, because what happens is, as you know, and I've seen this, for example, in solar PV. I think the industry standard when I installed 10 years ago was maybe 240 watts per panel. Now the average is maybe 320 watts. So you're getting more energy produced per square meter. The same with, as you know very well, from wind turbines. When you look at some of these monsters that Vestas and other companies are making now, 6, 7, 8, up to I think 10 megawatt turbines now. And so with this technology developing so fast, I found it interesting that you were saying, as you're preparing the file for the submission, you actually have to go back. And we've seen that actually with clients who said, well, when we were originally getting the ATR, we were developing this project, we were thinking of using whatever the industry standard was for panels, but maybe there was a lapse of time and they go back out to try and do the project, and suddenly the technologies have moved beyond. Do you see that, and I appreciate your comment on the batteries, do you see that with batteries and your expectation for batteries as storage, and we're talking about whether it's lithium ion or new technologies, that indeed that these will be more accessible, and as they improve in technology, maybe the costs will come down. So for the prosumers and others, it may be viable to have a wall box or something, or like what Elon Musk has developed with Tesla, where these can be sort of part of anyone building a home in Bucharest now. It'll be part of the sales. You'll say, look, this house will come with, and I've seen this. We've seen projects residential where they're now selling the idea that it's not only energy efficient with the triple thermopane and everything, but you're going to have already pre-installed panels, or you're going to have heat pumps, or you're going to have maybe perhaps even battery. I mean, do you see that the Romanian market could go this way towards having these sort of hybrid, where you're going to have the storage using the cutting edge technology, and even projects that are going to be developed in the future, we may be using technologies that we don't even have yet, or that we're not thinking about?
I think, like all the decision, you are doing it once because you have to, or second because you want to. I think we'll be in the phase in which we will have to. Look on what is happening now on the prosumer. We are approaching to a level in which basically there is going to needed some intervention in order how to handle this, because when you're discussing more than 1.5 gigawatt installed power in a prosumer, given the installed power at the national level and the actual evolution of the consumption, which, by the way, doesn't overpass now the 7 gigawatts. And I think this is one of the key points in which all of us should think and where and how to address this. Second, there is everything on the table now as scenarios. We're discussing about industrialization, we're discussing about huge investment in the intensiveness of the energy consumption. If we'll be having this, there is going to be. It's a matter if Romania will going to be this regional player in which we should be handling Moldova, we should be handling part of Ukraine, we should be handling our neighbors in what lies the generation. Yeah. Exactly. So this is one of the things. Second, it will matter, but this is depending on the interconnection capacities which are now in progress. So there are, how to say it, extremely numerous variables on the table, but this doesn't make it, how to say it, because we are in a very, very good moment. Mm-hmm. There are a huge number of projects, and a lot of them very good, very well prepared. It will be, let's say, at least a pity not to do it. Second, we are having taxonomy, ESG, all of this, which I'm not repeating all of this because I'm saying on and on, which anyway will push everybody to consume green. Yeah? So together with what we're having as flexibility coming from the nuclear side, now I think this is the way forward. This is where the entire European is going forward, and we need to go into that, because one way or the other, the tax system and the way in which the market would look, it will impose you to go in that to go to that directions.
Yeah, and it was interesting because you made a comment which I think is very valid that they're complementary systems. So again, we have a tendency of and people are say solar PV developers, they only look, and then you have wind or you have biomass, whatever it may be. But in fact, it's sort of an all of the above. So you can create these hybrid projects. And I'm curious from your perspective, what are sort of the benefits and also on the flip side the challenges for developing these sorts of hybrid projects in particularly in Romania?
So hybrid projects are the most effective because one, you are using the same electrical infrastructure, the same connection, so it definitely adds a plus in the return only because of this. Second, you can maximize your, because and I'm speaking also in our cases and all the wind farms in Romania. So if you are looking in the period of 1 year in which you are actually using the capacity, or let's say above 90% of the capacity which you have in the ATR to actually deploy the energy, you will be seeing that there are, let's say, a very small amount of intervals. So in the rest, you have a capacity which are actually you are not using it. Yeah. So this is going to allow you to maximize these hours in which basically you are approaching to that. And now if you have this alternative, and it is allowed also through the legislation to have photovoltaic plus wind plus storage, this is somehow also the key for system stability, for baseload delivery.
And obviating the need for this €1 billion upgrade perhaps. I mean, you're still going to need to upgrade the grid, but maybe not to the level necessary if you can balance it more effectively.
If you are balancing it at the point of the injection, this is actually one of the key drivers. And this is already used, and probably most of you know, there are several projects which are already in progress now in Romania in the hybrid. So yes, it is a matter of being courageous, because to address just the spread between the peak of peak, to address just the, I don't know, the imbalances or these frequency restoring services and what is now the new markets to be launched starting April next year, and so it might be, how to say it, provocative, because still there is subject of things to follow, which nobody knows exactly the evolution and how by Mari, and I'm discussing on the market interconnection which is going to be happening and all of this of the TSO side. There is going to be an update. It can go up, it can go down, so still there is all the scenarios on the table. But by having it hybrid, I think it allows you to be more flexible and adapt more easily to whatever it will follow.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's fascinating what you're talking about, because it's really about rationalizing the technologies so that they mate well with the grid, and so that a lot of these problems we have, the disconnect, no pun intended, between the energy being produced and the interface with the grid, we can address the problem right there. And that from what you're saying, the technologies aren't only there, they're improving by arithmetically or geometrically every 6 months or whatever. So it's really
I was just reading now.
Yeah.
Few years ago, when I heard about the new scale and this, and there are other smaller, this type of small scale reactors. Now we're discussing about micro reactors, and this probably is going to be the future game changer in the upcoming, I don't know, 10, 15 years. I don't know. I think
maybe
the acceleration. The acceleration, and this is going to be in the end, because we're going now in wind farms. You'll be seeing the computer which is managing the turbine has Windows XP on it. The provocation on the supply chain for the components, the cyber security and everything, it's quite challenging, but still we are succeeding and we have an upgrading, because you discussed also about it. So evolution is part of everything. You need to do it now. Our ambition again to reach this, I don't know if it will be 38% of renewable in the end by 2030, which is going to be the final, which is set by the new target in Romania. But these gigawatts is going to be anyway a must. So the way we'll be reaching...
Absolutely. I read an interesting article recently that they reckon by 2030 or 2035 at the outside, we will have achieved, say, peak fossil, where then there will be more production, and economically speaking, it will really no longer make sense. Many of the big incumbent oil and gas companies, we've already seen this, are starting to go into alternative technologies because it'll just, we talk about green, and I always like to say, we all want to think green, in the sense of preserving the environment, but when it makes sense from the green perspective of money, where, you can produce a megawatt of energy from a renewable energy source cheaper, more efficiently and cleaner than you can from a carbon fossil fuel, it just makes sense. And this is the way I think you're right, that with the technologies, we're going that way.
And I have one final comment. We need to think also that by 2030, or let's say the 30s, how it will be named at that moment, most of the existing capacities will be reaching to the point in either they are decommissioned, either they are subject of repowering. So this is also one of the things which is going to be needed to put in the public agenda, because again, you have there the infrastructure, you have there the existing, I don't know, from experience and know-how on the actual site energy capacity and so this should be also evaluated, and we should be starting to think also on how to address this this part.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, again, very fascinating thoughts from Livio. I don't know, again, I'm going to give an opportunity if there's anyone out there that would like to ask Livio a question now before we move on to the next speaker. If there's not, then I'm going to be introducing, we were going to have Sebastian here, but he was unable from Monson. Instead, we have, and we're very pleased to have, Alexandru Bratoshin, who is the project manager for Monson. He's an electrical engineer with international experience of over 15 years in the area of civil and naval construction, commissioning of large systems, and operation of renewable energy sources. And obviously, Monson is a very well-known player on the local market. Maybe you want to say a few words about your company and what you're doing in particular. We really appreciate you kind of stepping in at the last minute, and as we say in American baseball, you know, pinch hitting for your colleague, for Sebastian, who couldn't be here. But thank you so much, Alexandru.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation, and ladies, gents, we have also a presentation here. My colleague Sebastian, he couldn't arrive, but in the last moment he sent me here. I'm an electrical engineer. Mostly I was working in the naval industry, but from 1 year I'm in Monson. And I was in charge for this project as well. Let me say, is a lithium large battery storage system of 6 megawatts, maybe one of the biggest in the Romania, with a total capacity of 24 megawatts hour. Why is a unique system? It's very close to Mireasa hybrid renewable energy power plant, which have several wind turbines connected there. Maybe I will use this pointer to show a little. This is the actual battery hall, to call it, with a connection point here with several meters, rooms and SCADA rooms and connection point. Here is full skid, where we have inverters and transformers with skid medium voltage cells with a lot of chillers and dry coolers and heat pump technology to cool these batteries with water. And somewhere here is the Mireasa station, where we have the wind turbine connected there. Why is a hybrid? We try to get her till next year. We already have this 50 megawatts from wind farm. We are under construction of 35 megawatts of PV plant. And to extend this lithium large battery storage system to 54 megawatts till next year. Yeah, something I know that Monson is a very known company, but a little description or more items from Monson. Monson is developed over 5,000 megawatts in Romania, wind and PV. Is one of the first company operating in an ISP for renewable energy asset management. First private dispatch center in Romania. Has now over 30% of REAs in Romania. First renewable energy training center in Romania. First European service company providing green water desalination in Qatar. First company in Romania that built an automated panel cleaning robot. location of this battery storage is very important. Is in very near in Dobrogea, on this Gălbior place, where it's well known like a wind farm. Monson has this near, how I say it, Mireasa site, with more than 150 megawatts of the renewable energy assets. There are also other wind farms owned by Renovation, Hydroelectric and AGPR, with more than 800 megawatts of the installed capacity. A little about this battery system. EU's prime battery supplier is a Romanian producer, if you know it. Here we have a general layout of these rooms. Each of these battery row is with a capacity of 1 megawatt. In total, we have here 6 megawatts power with a technical room that we can also consider it a control room with a distribution for DC that later will run to the skid, to the inverters, and via inverters we go to the AC current to the low side of the transformers, and later to the connection, and then going to the connection point in Mireasa station. Maybe I need to discuss or reach the point of us said behind the meter. What is this behind the meter? I believe that is the condition for the condition for the connection to the grid will not change with the installation of this BESS, without requiring extra power. Is a simple solution, to say it like that. What is mean standalone? Is mean that this BESS will take power directly from the grid, which is probably looking easy, but it's not. And actually, it will do the parameter regulation and system restoration. I believe that Monson was taking care of renewable for a long time already, have some experience, and combining this hybrid power plant with PV, wind farm, and storing capacity is one of the best optimization that we can have it on the market in the moment. A little about this system of the batteries that we believe that is better done like that. Each module are cooled by the very well hydraulically balanced system. The cooling temperature is around 18 degrees Celsius independent of the charging or discharging rate. The water cooling system has designed by Monson and will be implemented on the large scale. The system is under patent. What is happening? Actually, we work with two circuits of cooling. One is the primary circuit, which is including this chiller, heat pump, and dry cooler. And another one is the secondary that we can see it here in the picture, that each rack have her own circulating pump, frequency drive, that will balance the cooling properly. And this, we all know the lithium-ion batteries, they have some high temperature during operating. And it's better to keep it under control, this temperature, to don't have any other issues like off-gassing or thermal runaway. And in this way, we believe that we accomplish a better balance cooling system of these big capacity batteries. Yeah, this was the presentation from Sebastian, and I'm sorry.
No, Alexandra, I
was not
appreciate
here.
it. It's very fascinating, and I've actually tailored my questions more towards you because I know you're an engineer, so they're going to be more in sort of your wheelhouse. One of the questions I had was just, what are some of the challenges? I mean, you talk about the construction, because obviously this was your baby. You helped to engineer this in terms of such a large battery storage system, probably one of the first, if not the first, in Romania. And this could be a challenge. Like, I was intrigued to see you used a local battery supplier, for example. I mean, when you're looking at it as an engineer and, say, project manager, what were some of the challenges maybe you weren't expecting or that you had to tackle as the project was being built?
Yeah, I believe that each pilot project have their own hassles and challenges.
Yeah.
I was not working alone on this project for sure. We had several.
So it wasn't just you with a hard hat doing the chantier out there?
We do it also, but it was a big team for struggling to get this system to run. We have several problems with, let me say, paperwork and all these hassles that in Romania sometimes we have it.
Create the problems, right?
One example is with these inverters, that they didn't have a certification for exactly type that we brought. He had certification for the whole family of that product, which involves a lot of things with our suppliers, and luckily we solved it.
Mm-hmm. What about, if I can jump in, what about the idea to use water to cool the batteries instead of, say, air? Was that a conscious decision you guys made? And I noticed you got this patent that you, I mean, what sort of was the evolution there with in the thinking process when you decided to go with a water chilling system?
Yeah, water we believe that is a better cooling agent. And we try to move from the containerized system to a upscale hall. What is going on? You can also have it with air, but here where we have it, this plant is in an open field.
Yeah.
You have a lot of dust. It's our agricultural area, and for sure we will have some problems with this air cooling. Mm-hmm. Water cooling is more balanced. You can have several redundancy there. You can put more batteries. You have bigger space. You can take more providers. There are a lot of benefits to say.
And you mentioned actually that you made the decision to go with a building rather than containers for the battery. What was the thought process there?
Honestly, I don't know exactly what was the whole process, but I think that the flexibility.
From your perspective as an engineer, presumably you're happy with the decision to go with a building. Do you see what are some of the advantages?
First of all, you have more space. Then you have separated skid, that's mean power generator, from the batteries. Mm-hmm. You have several distance. Let me say distance that can be vital in the safety way. Then you have, you can add or you can customize your system better. You can add more sensors, or if you like not only redundancy, you can make redundancy to redundancy, and you can add detection of gases or some other things that you wish.
Yeah.
Connected all to a SCADA where you can control it and monitor it from the distance, to say.
Which is kind of what Liviu was saying, to sort of the monitoring systems that they have on the turbines. You can have those also in the battery system.
Yes, you can. You can use several other safety systems for fire detection and suppression, to say it. Yeah. You can use, let me say, inert gas. Mm-hmm. You use it in our...
You may have mentioned, how long has this been this is commissioned now, right? It's operational?
It's around 95% done.
Okay. Right.
We are trying to have is in the process of obtaining the conformity certificate. Okay. All right. From the TSO. Yeah.
I'd be curious. The reason I ask is because once you've got a track record where it's been operational, it'd be interesting to see if could be a solution or another, arrow in the quiver, so to speak. And as again, Liviu was saying, all of the above. So you could be, to Olivian's strategy of hydrogen, water. You also have this idea of the batteries, which is interesting. They're produced here in Romania, so it's also good for the local, the battery producer. Evidently, I would imagine that's a big contract for them. So that's creating more jobs and opportunities also for the supply chain. So look, I don't want to take, we're getting close to then, we still have another speaker. I don't know if there was other questions from the audience, but I thank you very much again,
Thank you,
Alexandru. It's really fascinating for stepping in at the last minute. That's much appreciated. I know how that is. It can be a little daunting sometimes. So do we have any questions for Alexandru before we move on to the last but not least, as they say, speaker? If we don't, I'm going to take pleasure in introducing Valentin Gheorghiu. I'm sorry, there was a question. Apologies. Hi, Tomasz. How are you?
Thank you, Brian. Hi, Brian. Tomasz Muszyński, JETEC, Romania. One question. In Monson, you conveyed the message you are almost the best, let's say, or the best in Romania. You have a very big chunk, so you are a market leader. What is the future looking like? Which sector you are targeting? Separate PV, wind, or storage are not very sexy. Do you see the future in hybrid projects, or what you are looking at?
In the future, for sure, we'll develop, or we have on the roll, big projects of PV plants, but also this hybrid PV plant with little capacity BESS and wind turbines. I know, or I hear that my colleagues are talking about the hydrogen, and we have a contract as well. The best way will be to connect all of this to see how they're running. But the feeling that I have it is that they will invest in the future in our country, and for this hybrid technology and projects.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you also.
Thanks for the question, and thank you, Alexandru. And now we'll introduce again Valentin Gheorghiu, who is the Vice President of Corporate Operations with Restart Energy. You can see their role up there. They're dealing with renewable investments, investors, and capital markets in energy. He has more than 20 years of management experience in financial and operational management, and is a firm believer in the concept of think different. He firmly believes that continuous innovation, we've heard about some of the innovation already, and creative thinking are the key to business success, both financial and operational. He's been with Restart for the last 5 years and has successfully supplied these principles in areas he manages. And very interested to hear your perspective and thoughts, Valentin, on what you've heard maybe today, and just generally what your prognosis is for this area of energy, hybrid projects, energy storage, and the opportunities for the future.
First, thank you for having me. Nice to be here. Yeah, I heard a lot of about a lot of solutions here, technically mainly. But one of the things that we still need here in Romania for all this to get traction, it's first regulatory clarity, and also from our government a clarity regarding the strategy.
Yeah.
Because we are discussing a lot, and I saw in the last years in my meetings with various counterparties in the government, a lot of strategies, a lot of ambitious plans. But unfortunately, when we are talking about follow through on that, here we are still lacking. And one of the discussion earlier, why we don't focus more on hydro, because hydro takes time. And in case of Romania, hydro, for example, I mean the bulk of the segment has to be managed by the government, because it's strategic, because it needs a high volume of investment. And
you need the political will that endures beyond the next election cycle.
And the political will. And also, let's not forget that building hydro capacity also affects the environment. It's not something which is in a box and doesn't touch on this. But in the end, if we don't have this clarity, this political will, and I think most of all, an understanding for all the deciding factors, it's going to be difficult to get traction on all these strategies.
Mm-hmm. Please.
Yeah, you mentioned about hydro that is taking time. Yeah, it's true. It's taking time. The latest project that I saw was built in 14 years. Nowadays, as the other panelists said, the technology is evolving a lot, so it can be built in like few years, up to 5 years. This type of project. Another discussion that is related also to the question that I had is whether the TSO or another company will build this type of project. Well, yes, it's a hydropower plant, so it needs to be run by people, civil engineering, engineers, that they know this type of technology. The second one, it needs to be operated by also engineers from the TSO. So that's why also it's a challenge to build this type of project, because it has this dual aspects that we need to take into consideration.
Yeah, but we need to take into account also the timeline.
Yeah,
because one of the things that we are seeing, and we at Restart Energy are directly involved in this, is the rapid development and deployment of renewable energy in Romania. In order for that to work, you will need balancing capacity. So, and storage will play for sure one important step. What kind of storage is the one, because we are discussing also the investors' expectations that are investing here, is the one that is available now, it's market tested, and it's economically viable. If we go with the best solution, which I admit in our case is hydro, because we have a lot of capacity here and experience, is going to take time. Besides what you said, that, okay, the technology advanced, and I agree with you that now we can build it faster, we have to keep in mind all the time the Romanian government, which is moving at a different speed. And that in turn impacts the viability of this kind of solution for us.
Can I ask you, Valentin, if I may, what do you think are the kind of will be, because you touched on this, what are sort of the key drivers to attract, let's say, investment into energy storage, let's say in general, whether despite we talk about which technology, whether it's batteries or hydro, and I realize that the type of the storage technology will certainly impact, but where do you see, what really in your view, if you're looking at attracting investment, we've heard from the panelists, I think there's a uniform consensus that hybrid projects and energy storage is the future, for many reasons, as were enumerated very eloquently here, about everything from balancing the grid, from efficiencies in the energy production and matching that with the demand. How do we get more investors coming into these projects in Romania?
Well, again, from our experience, because we have a division that also develops renewable projects, solar, we are doing only solar. And now, for example, all our projects that we are developing, I mean, utility scale above 50 megawatt, they have storage included in the...
And that seems to be the trend we're seeing as well.
Yes, and I think it's a healthy trend, because in the end, again, all this capacity that will come online in the next few years, it will need to have this kind of capacity attached in order for us to function properly. But going back to your question, depending on what we are talking about storage. It's building storage facilities here, building factories that will build batteries. So there are multiples facets on this.
But I think it's, maybe I'm biased because I've been here so long, but I think I'm talking also with colleagues in other countries in the region, and it was alluded to here by some speakers, Romania is blessed with certain natural geographical, let's say, advantages. I mean, we have the potential for biomass if you look at the amount of arable land and the agricultural waste that's not being monetized. If you look at the wind, you look at the solar, you look at offshore gas, you look at offshore wind. I mean, we have geothermal conceivably in the Carpathian Basin. If you look cities like Budapest and others are using municipal geothermal, which we haven't even really touched on. So there's all these potentials, not to mention nuclear, which we'll hear about in the next panel. So it seems to me that Romania has, it's not just lip service, we actually should be a net energy exporter for the region because we should be an energy hub. And if some of these sources are exploited, we'll be there. But if we can take this all of the above and work in a complementary, again, as opposed to a competitive way, it seems to me that the potential for Romania is really through the roof.
Yes, I agree. And in the end, we circling back to how not only the central government, but also the local authorities understand to support this. For example, we looked at biomass. We looked at a lot of projects, but one of that was the biomass. And although the technology was available, everything was in place, one thing that we found very difficult is to collect the waste. Yeah. We don't have enough points to collect this waste.
Yeah, that's your feedstock.
So
you have to be able
if you don't have the raw material, it's very difficult to make the investment. Also, we looked at, because we were discussing here about the heating, and virtually, I think, 90% of local communities in Romania are bankrupt in terms of local heating companies. Yeah. And yes, the cogeneration might be a solution moving forward. But when you go and start discussing all these projects and possible solutions, it's very difficult to advance unfortunately, it's very difficult to advance this project with the local authorities.
Do you think, sorry to interrupt, but I'm just thinking out loud here, because we talked about the fact that in the first boom period, a lot of the investment was really driven by chasing subsidies, going after those greens. In fact, I had some clients reckon 85% of the value on some of these projects was actually the pricing, or the anticipated, let's say, return on the green certificates, which obviously didn't pan out, versus the sale of the electricity. And now, as we know, next year we're hoping that Romania will introduce a contracts for difference scheme in some instances, if the CFD, and that's another whole topic, and I realize we're down to the last 5 minutes. But do you think that might be another driver for investment, or don't see that as really impacting?
No, for sure it will be, and also the recent PPA market that started taking shape. Yeah. It's also one of the elements that will drive investors here. So we have a good base. So yes, we've been blessed with the natural resources. We have human resources, although not as many as we would like. Here we need to work a little bit. Yes, but in the end, because you spoke about the green certificate scheme, I still meet with investors that when they are hearing about Romania, they are going in that place instantly. Yeah. And that's why I said it's so important to have some clarity where we are going. Because when I'm speaking with the investor, okay, that we make in the business plan, they see the technical expertise, everything it's in place. The lawyers are doing a good job lately.
We hope.
Yes, but then it comes the questions, okay, what about the regulatory framework? How we are moving forward?
You're absolutely right.
The PPAs, for example.
As you said, there's also sort of the black eye people. And it's not, in fairness, it's not just Romania. If you look at Spain, they had all these arbitrations because of the feed-in tariff that was revoked. And yet we also still have, these changes in the law which are intended to, let's say, liberalize the market, but can be construed in certain ways by different people as actually imposing, and I'm not going to get into specifics, but I think we all know what we're talking about when you're talking about projects under, for example, 50 megawatts and whether, what kind of zoning paperwork is needed versus what the reality is in terms of what's being asked for. But yeah, there's definitely a challenge. These challenges, I think, remain, and I think that for investors looking at the market, they'll bring up these anecdotal stories about investors who may have been screwed in the past. But oftentimes, it may be that the project they were looking at had some flaws that maybe weren't uncovered during the due diligence, whether it was legal or technical. or it may have been any number of factors. Maybe the local developer with whom they got into bed was not maybe the most experienced or reputable for the type of project they wanted to do. So I think you have to look on each case. And oftentimes when talking to investors, again, as the lawyers, we're sort of the canary in the coal mine. We try to promote the Romanian market. I think it has huge potential. But you have to look at it also realistically and understand, as you've rightfully pointed out as well, that there is you have to go in with eyes wide open. I mean, there are real barriers and hurdles to the market. But I think if you can address those and go into the market with realistic expectations, I think, and as we've heard from a number of the panelists here who have all been very successful, I think the future bodes well, especially if we as investors or individuals who are active in the renewables recognize what the next wave will be and what the future holds. And I think the consensus, again, what I've heard is hybrid is definitely going to be the future for many reasons. And this is why I think, just to sort of, because I'm cognizant of the time and I want to wrap up this panel, I think this is why we decided to have this panel and discuss this theme. I think it's been very interesting for me, very enlightening. To hear the different views, and I want to thank you for your contribution and to all the panelists here. I want to thank the audience. I hope it was interesting, and as they say in American television, stay tuned because we have another exciting hour coming up, and with some very interesting and informative speakers. And I want to encourage you all to take a break and have some coffee. The idea is we'll be back here, I think, on the quarter of the hour, is right, so quarter of. So 15 minutes, but if you're about 5 or 10 minutes late because you're enjoying your coffee, we're not going to crack the whip too hard. But we want to start back again with the next panel. I want to thank again all of the panelists here today. If you'll join me in a round of applause. Thank you for your contributions. And again, they'll be available if you have any questions during the break. Otherwise, enjoy your caffeine fix and your pastries out there, and we'll see you in about 15 minutes. Thank you all.